Hey, cunts, don't forget to click the subscribe button.
This is Corona number 7. This is the 7th seminar that we've given during the Corona time. Actually, the 8th, but the first one, the police shut down. And we're still making good on that and allowing the people to come. But depending on where you live in the world, some places you have to have quarantine coming here and going back, which means that's like 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks, which I'm worth a lot, but I wouldn't come in. If I had to do 5 weeks of quarantine, I wouldn't be here. But one of the questions that comes up from time to time, if not spoken, implicit in your thought process, is why I even do this, which is a good question. And although we're going to talk about some data that we've captured during the Corona period, and it's, I don't want to have breakfast with you, I don't want to have lunch with you, I don't even want to have dinner with you, Sally makes me, because I know familiarity breeds contempt. For those of you that don't speak English as your first language, do you understand what I just said? Familiarity breeds contempt. Do we all know what that means? Does anybody not know? The more friendly I am with you, the harder it is for me to put a cap in your ass. Hurt you. In my particular case, that's really not the case. But for most human beings, and I proved 2 seminars ago, I had a heart. I showed them a picture of my heart from all the exams I had for my 75th birthday. Familiarity breeds contempt. There is a burden of leadership, which none of you, hardly any of you understand, because you've got no leadership skills. Now, some of you have been in business 15, 20, 25 years. You have 1 year, 15, 20, 25 times. Because if you've been in business 25 years and you came to this seminar, something's wrong with you. Categorically, something is fucking wrong. That means you didn't learn a goddamn thing, did you? There's a burden of leadership. There is a burden of responsibility. And some of the guys that we're going to talk about, the icons, and success leaves clues. And we'll get around to the icon from last night, but he's going to be no different. The characteristics that he showed last night in the movie you saw are not going to be any different, plus or minus 5%, than all the big fucking hitters that we're going to talk about this week. And I'm not even going to ask you, because I don't want you to lie to me. How many of you can relate to him on a personal level? Not a goddamn one of you. But you want to know the why instead of the how. But the reason I'm here, basically, and still doing this, is because I get letters like this. Fuck, come on. From the St. Teresa orphanages that we support, with little pictures of St. Teresa, and all the little nuns hovering around saying prayers for me every day. All the brothers, all the priests, hundreds of them around the world that say I'm a fucking saint. Now, the devil was a saint. He fell out with God, supposedly. But he was a saint. He was an angel. I'm closer to that angel than Michael, for example. I'm closer to the devil. And I believe with all my heart, through thousands of transactions, that the truth always hurts. And one of the reasons why you're here and you haven't been more successful in your life is nobody told you the truth. And we're gonna, in spite of that, show you the how, not the why. I said last night, and I'm going to say it again, we have data to prove that people that ask the most questions fail. Because normally the people, not 100%, but normally the people that ask the most questions are the most insecure, have the lowest self-esteem. Not 100%, but close enough for government work. And I already told you, the people that, the data we can show, the people that take the most copious notes, the most detailed notes, but what I forgot to say last night, and then go over them. I left that part out. Just you taking a bunch of notes here isn't going to do shit. But when you understand how the people that are being successful, not just in Corona, but pre-Corona, they immerse themselves, everything in their life. And when you listen to the webinars of the success stories out there, and most of my success stories don't want to talk to you. It's only the few that still feel, thank you few, obligated to want to try to help me help you. Because most of them are, I'm on board, pull up the gangplank. Everybody understand what that means? I'm on board, fuck you. Because you're competition for them. And contrary to what you think, nobody wants to fucking help you. So the few that you're going to hear, the 12 or 14 or 15, and I say 12, 14, or 15, depending on when I read your homework today at lunchtime, and based on the questions that you ask me, I'll determine where you are in the timeline or where you should be. You'll see 10 or maybe you'll see 18 webinars. It'll be depending on what I think you need based on my vast experience of giving the seminar. And the only thing that's changed with the Corona seminars, other than the webinars are different because they're out there fighting off Corona, and they tell you about it, is that they've doubled and tripled their output. Doubled, in other words, they're making more calls. And now you should be able to put a dream team together and make in 2 weeks. That's if you're doing it half-assed. And some of you have already started that. You've already started putting your dream teams together. Why? You wasted your money, but anyway. But you can do a deal in a month. Easy. Easy peasy. Now, I said I was going to do some housekeeping. Okay, well, the next normal for us is the old normal because QLA hasn't changed. All it is easier now. And contrary to what I thought, but based on the new data, I would think if you thought it was easier now, you would be like a bunny, out of the chute. But what has happened is, because you know it's easier, you've put on the brakes. I alluded to this last night. You've taken your foot off not you, but I mean QLA in general. Now, the guys that are still serious, like Marcus Bauer, who did 22 deals last year, 23 deals, he's got his foot through the floorboard. I mean, he's hitting the accelerator so hard. But because of human nature, because we're human, I guess, most of you are, I certainly not, you have, as a group, have let off the accelerator because you know it is easier. Because you don't have to go out and physically see anybody. There's no shoe leather involved anymore. As long as Corona, the only time shoe leather meaning going to see what you're buying. But now you're putting boards together without seeing people. You're getting lawyers and accountants without seeing people. You know how much fucking time that saves? So what you've done as a group is you've put the brakes on. Oh, Nelly, I got to slow down here. I'm going too fast. And we actually have kids buying companies without seeing them, which is wrong. That's going to bite them in the ass sooner than later. So now the only time to go out is when you're the last meeting. It makes the motivated seller more comfortable, and it should make you more comfortable, and whoever of the board that you take along as part of your acquisition team, make them more comfortable. Now, I've said everything I'm going to read on this slide right now, I've said 100 jillion times already. But I'm so fucking tired of people contacting the office. I don't believe YouTube comments. Why? Because you're all brain dead, retards, shits. I've been banned by Facebook and Instagram. Now I can only be followed on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, but I don't respond to any of them. Wikipedia has blocked all real input for years. You may try. We don't try to change it. But you could, if Tony Robbins has this much on Wikipedia, and Grant Cardone has this much on Wikipedia, and I'd have 4 times as much. But I don't. Be my guest, YouTube. Be my guest, guys, here. If you want to try to change my profile on Wikipedia, try. It's certainly not accurate. Though we have 1,000 on our seminar list, and people are writing, I'm gonna come back to you in 3 years from now when you don't have 1,000 on your seminar list. Because they're looking for an excuse to procrastinate more. But life still happens. People die. People get corona. People can't afford to take off from their job to go through quarantine. So, I mean, some of you got in this seminar by the skin of your ass, by accident, because somebody else couldn't come. My personal COVID pay price to action is the expense of corona-proofing this old hog, 550 years old, all the fucking money we spent here. So you could have private bathrooms, private bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. And, well, this thing costs much, what costs the kids in time. I probably wouldn't have put up all the shit, but we're in this room forever, it appears, and I may be the only one that listens to the studies, and I read between the lines. They're talking about if you think that masks and social distancing is going away, you're brain dead. Just as after 9/11, we thought security at airports was a pain in the ass, didn't we? It's worse now than it was 20 years ago. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Corona, and all the things attached to it are going to get worse, not better. And I predicted the second wave, and I predicted a third wave, because it's never going away. Almost all in the seminar here, sacrifice went through 14 days. My health's terrific. We'll continue seminars next year. This time last year, I was planning my exit. That one-day seminar in London was going to be my sayonara. Go fuck yourself. But a bunch of things happened in between, and I changed my mind. I do change my mind, not too often. But the cost is going up next year. I'm going to still do my 10,000 pounds an hour consulting, but a few, because I'm going to spend more time with pro bono and charity work. 2021, I have no plans for worldwide travel, no devotee travel appointments, which I actually miss, because I used to meet kids in cities for 15, 20, 30 minutes. I miss that. I do miss that, because it allowed me to have a pulse on what was going on. No personal uni talks. I will take less chairmanships, maybe a couple this coming year, maybe none, depends. And we'll talk more about faith later in the seminar. And this is not a religious seminar by any stretch of the imagination. But a couple things have come up based on real data, real fact points vis-a-vis faith, but we'll talk about that later. Now, any fool can make a rule, and any fool will mind it. That's where we are right now with Corona. Most of the people that are sitting down rules, like the governor of California, and I knew California was fucked up 35 years ago. How did you know it was fucked up? I said, just look at the people. The brains are baked too much by the sun out there. Was I right? Well, yes, I was right. Now, I'm missing out on this. British Airways stewardesses reportedly offers adult entertainment during flights. Now, why am I the only one that put this on social media? Why? Nothing like that's not even first class. That's in coach. Nothing like a blowjob in coach. God damn. Because you can't take the truth. That's why. The slide's coming up. A lady 2.5 months ago died from corona on the runway flying from Phoenix, Arizona to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Am I the only person on the planet to see that in the newspaper? Apparently so. Because they don't want you to know that you can be so sick and die on the fucking plane from corona. That must have been a fun flight. God damn. Now see, that's your dream. That's your wet dream, you miserable little pieces of shit that want to get your willy wet. And getting fucked at 35,000 feet is no big deal. But watching the sperm float around when it's your own plane, that is fun. Here in the UK now, they're saying if you call somebody ugly, it's a hate crime. If I call somebody fat, it's a fucking hate crime now. How fucked are we? How fucked are we? There's the lady that died in the plane. They're trying to keep this off the news. And it took them 8 weeks to announce that she died in the plane. What kind of news is that? Because it's a lot worse than they're telling us. Which is all good for us. I'm not saying this for you to be afraid. You're afraid enough of a lot of things I can't understand. But I'm telling you because they're going to be motivated sellers. To name one of our current stars, he said, for the first 4 or 5 months of Corona, they just acted as if they were putting their head in the ground like an ostrich, and it would pass. And now they've pulled their head out of the ground, and they see it's still here. And so now they're trying to sell. And the key factor for this program is a motivated seller. It's like the day before I went into the military. My dad decided to bond with me the day before, and he took me out to dinner. I thought he was going to tell me he had cancer or something. He never take me shit. Out to dinner, we had a few drinks, and about like where that young lady's at the end. Let's say the bar is this way, and where that young woman is, there's a lady sitting at the bar. My dad and I. My dad's here, and I'm here. And the bartender brings us a drink, brings 2 drinks, and puts it in front of us. And the bartender looks at my father and says, excuse me, sir, but the lady at the end of the bar bought you a drink. And my dad said, take it back. Then a single drink came for me. And so he looks at me and he says, this isn't an exact quote, but Dan, there's nothing more wonderful than a grateful woman. There's nothing more wonderful than a grateful woman. Now, see, you little guys don't know how to get your willy wet. You don't know what that means, even. And then a note came. This was from my dad. Can I borrow your son for the evening? I was about to find out what he meant by a grateful woman. In your dreams. You don't even think of that in your wet dreams. That's the story of my life. Mick Jagger has not gotten laid more than me. The whole Rolling Stones. There was a medical fraud back in the 60s and 70s that they said that the male organs can only produce between 30 and 35,000 orgasms. 30 and 35,000. And I went to dick doctors because I was worried I was going to run out. For real. For real. In the history of the seminar, 28 years, all the men that have come in 28 years haven't been laid 30,000 times. Cumulatively. But one of the things when we talk about the program is I never took no for an answer. I mean, literally. Now, these first few slides are catch-up. Bill Gates, about a year ago, came out with a statement. He said that he didn't believe in, never had talked about it before, he didn't believe in vacations. Now he believes in vacations. Well, now he just came out and he says the most important thing in business is knowing how to sell. Selling! Most of you in this room couldn't give a blowjob away to a fucking drunken sailor. Selling. And the article in Inc. magazine goes on to explain all the variations of selling that there exists in a business today. I've said this since day one. I am just a used car salesman that honed his skills to be able to sell governments. But I'm a salesman. But see, you didn't go to school and get 2 master's degrees. You didn't go to school and get a PhD. You didn't go to school to get a medical degree to be a salesman. If you would have told, some of you don't have any education, that's great. But for those of you that have multiple degrees, or any kind of degree whatsoever, if you told your parents that you were going to school, university, to learn how to be a salesman, just imagine what they tell you. And that's why a lot of people have trouble with QLA. Because they weren't raised to be a fucking salesman. Where in the pecking order of life is a salesman? I had guys that their parents sold aluminum or whatever, and they used to say he was a systems engineer. You never say your dad's a salesman, do you? He's some kind of fucking engineer or some kind of horse shit, right? But for the kids that can get over that, and not all of them can, it's the only game in town that you can use that you don't have to have any money. Now, some of you have tats, I don't, but I know people that have tats for 50 years and what they look like after 50 years. This is just one of the guys after 10 years. That's what you're going to look like. Kids don't want to see that slide. Now, the new is He-Man martial artists sleep with blow-up dolls. That's the new. Birth rate in Japan is down 26% in the last 10 years. Because men rather sleep with a blow-up doll. That's where we are. And people ask me, when I was at University of Pennsylvania a year ago, and when I was at Oxford 5 years ago, when I was at the Naval Academy, why have you given up on humanity? I had other slides then, but I rest my case. We're through. If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. This is a model that only has one moving part. One. And that's a motivated seller. And if it's not you don't have a motivated seller, you have shit. Move on to the next one. Everybody in this room, except for the people that have already started building their boards, you've probably doubled, you have to double the normal effort, but the normal effort to be rich, 2,000 cold calls. The guys that have already started are probably going to have to make 4,000 or 5,000 cold calls now. Now, see, if I was trying to sell, I wouldn't tell you that, would I? I'm not going to embarrass you by asking you how many have already started putting your board together. But you fucked up. If you had planned to come here. If you had no plans to come here, well then, fine. When I spoke at the University of Toronto a couple of years ago, I tried to see Mr. Peterson, but he didn't see me. But there's another slide that I used to use that 67% of the people in the workplace cry at least once a week, a Gallup poll. 67, call it two-thirds. Two-thirds of all people in the workplace cry weekly. Now, normally I wouldn't read past the headline, but then I read the article, just normal, somebody wasn't nice to him, et cetera, their boss told him he was a dipshit. And then Peterson came out with this. He says, staff cried and expressed dismay with the decision to publish beyond order, and how to improve business in 2 steps. Identify crying adults and fire them. Abso-fucking-lutely. I couldn't agree more. And we're going to teach you how to fire people here. The secret sauce that we don't give the YouTubers. We're going to teach you how to hire them, and then fire them, and then burn them at the stake if you like. You think firing anybody ever stopped the guy that you saw last night? Or Steve Jobs? Or anybody? No. There's no change without sacrifice. And notwithstanding, I've sacrificed a lot in my life, but I made a lot of money a lot in my life. But more importantly, the last 27 and a half years, almost 28 years now, I'm living vicariously, which is a dangerous road for me because almost all of you don't live up to my expectations. Now, if I was a coach like modern day volleyball coaches, I'd tell you how you're all going to surpass your expectation, and that's true. You will not surpass your highest and most crazy expectations about yourself. If you want to make $100 million, you're not going to make $300 million. You're going to make $101 million. If you want to make $500 million, you're going to make $505 million. If you want to make $10 million, you're going to make $11 million. I have data upon data upon data that proves this. You never exceed, other than by serendipity. I had a guy win the lottery once. Who come, hey, look at it. Okay. Other than that, in the Corona era, and you're going to talk to 10 or 12 of them, the biggest differentiation is the Corona era kids that are taking advantage of the Corona era, they play as if it was their last 2 minutes of their Super Bowl, the last 2 minutes of their last World Cup. Every day. A few years ago, I interviewed Tom Cruise's administrative assistant because I was going to open an office, a showbiz office in Los Angeles, blah, blah, blah. And I was interviewing people of that ilk, and he said, now this information is 5, 6, 7 years old. He said, Tom gets up every day as if he never made a movie, never made a nickel. And we're 16, 18 hours a day. 7 days a week. And I counter with, why did you leave him, kid? He says, it was the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't ask him, and very seldom do I ask the why, remember? And how has this changed your life? I try to just be a little Tom Cruise every day and realize, and I built up my own agency, yada, yada, yada. So he made a plus out of it. Or at least he's convinced himself he made a plus out of it. Most of us aren't capable. 10 years, almost to the day, I worked like a dog. 365, 15, 18, 20 hours a day for 10 years solid. Now, it's no secret that a majority of my net worth was built in those 10 years. Like a dog. We celebrated more Christmases in January than December. Daddy, why can't we have Christmas like everybody else? And how's Santa Claus going to find us? He'll find us, honey, don't worry. This is one of the current, you're going to talk to her, listen to her. This is one of the current superstars. Corona. This is in her reports. She doesn't have to send me, but by the way, your weekly reports that you're going to get the template for are for you, not to send to me. I don't give a shit. You understand what I'm saying? So this excerpted certain things. She generated 50 million Swiss francs, and she was picked Entrepreneur of the Year in Switzerland. And the journalist quoted when I mentioned the Dan Peña, the $1 trillion man. My results are slow for Dan. I fucking know. She bought herself a new, whatever kind of car, I guess it's a Porsche. Thanks much. Please thank Dan, King Dan, blah, 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 blah. But she's a French gal that works like a dog. Like a dog. Literally. A fucking dog. She did that in about a year. 11 months to be exact. Now, it's not a lot of money to me. You're going to listen to people that made $70 million in 7 months, $40 million in 3 months. And yes, we verify the numbers. Hard work never killed anybody, but why take a chance? And that's what they're doing, because they're taking their foot off the accelerator now. Because it is easier, people that follow QLA are working less hard. So for those of you that continue to work hard, you've got less competition. Don't go around saying the world owes you a living. Right now, and I have a problem with all the money they're giving out to everybody. Nobody ever gave me any fucking money. I'm one of the few guys on the planet that didn't take any money in any form, paid all our employees, even when they weren't working. I know a lot of rich guys that took money. I'm not one of them. I'll see, when Ruth Crisp and the Lakers took $7 and $12 million respectively, it wasn't, well, of course, they were ashamed to give it back. But, I mean, when they took that money, I mean, what were they thinking? Did they think it was going to be a secret? It's never the system, it's always you. I look perplexed there, like I'm saying something for the first time. You saw Barron Trump last night. You saw Coggins, and you saw the backward bicycle, and you saw the founder. Let's start with Barron. Our children were raised very similar to how he's been raised, which probably none of you in this room can relate to. Rich people figured out a long time ago, back in Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates' days, that poorness rubs off, and so does richness. So if you send your kids to those kind of schools, it's more likely that you're going to be able to inbreed with high-performance DNA genes than the poor white and black and yellow trash that you're from. Everybody understand that? A couple of you went to all right schools. All right schools. Not the great schools. There's a slide coming up day after tomorrow that shows the schools that have produced the most CEOs of the big companies in the world. And it's no coincidence that our children went to them. That wasn't by accident. That wasn't by serendipity. Whereas opposed to, I went to school you got to explain about. Comments about Barron Trump from you, the peanut gallery. Yes, sir.
When the media was mocking him, that he was being sleepy when
Donald was being sleepy, not Barron.
No, Barron was being sleepy while Donald was...
Oh, sleepy. I thought you said sleazy. Yeah. Okay.
They were mocking him because he looked sleepy or in a haze, but I believe he was actually addressing the nation when he will become president in his own imagination.
Maybe. I can tell you right now, having with our own kids raised very not dissimilar to the way Barron was raised, it's a different world. It just is. See, our kids don't think that this estate is anything special. They don't think our cars. Oh, they like the Ferrari. She has an Aston Martin that's in the garage. They like those cars because they're kids. They think my car is the Bentley and the Rolls are old fogey cars. And they are old fogey cars, but anyway. What else about Barron? Yes, sir.
He was raised to expect excellence and accept nothing less.
Now, we've shown that I used to then say, okay, and how many of you were raised, but you lie or you're delusional. But virtually nobody that comes to here was raised by their parents to expect excellence from you. Sometimes in athletics. That's the only exception. Sometimes in athletics. You had poor role models. What else about Barron? Okay, the backward bicycle. How many engineers do we have in the room? QLA is hard for engineers, accountants, lawyers, doctors, multiple degreed people, because this system is not conducive to the fact patterns that you've learned in your education. But the backward bicycle, we used to have a backward bicycle. Nobody ever rode it successfully, myself included, and I tried every week. I had a seminar. We had a couple kids that were able to not get on it right away, but I mean, almost kind of finger fuck with it, and then they rode it. Because we're having to reprogram, rewire almost everything that you've learned. There used to be a thing called, you know how when Hillary Clinton went and put acid on her hard drive to acid it, to clean it up? Well, they used to call in the old days, back in the 50s and 60s, they used to say, you got to Boraxo the prospect's mind. Boraxo was a soap that was sold on TV. And Ronald Reagan, before he was president, before he was governor, used to sell it. He was the selling agent. And it would take the hide off of you. But it cleaned you, for sure, Boraxo. And so my old sales manager, a guy named Kelly Norwood, who was a debunked lawyer from Bolt Hall, Berkeley, he says, Peña, a young boy like you, you got the Boraxo their brain. In other words, you got to take all the information they have or they think they know about such and such, and you got to clean that up, and then you got to put the facts as you understand them that are going to lead them to making a sale. And his famous words, but a boy like you, and in those days calling it somebody boy wasn't derogatory like today. A boy like you ought to close 100% of everybody you see. I.e., I had a 94.6% closing ratio when I sold real estate. 94.6. And I cried about the 5.4 that got away. You don't know anybody that's... And all my salesmen closed 50, 60%, because that was the expectation. But I led by example. What about the backward bicycle? Yes, sir.
My biggest takeaway was it took him 8 months to reprogram himself to learn how to ride the bike, but only 5 minutes to slip back into default once he got back on a regular bike.
You guys, this is a slight exaggeration, but you will, when you go to sleep tonight, you'll be in default when you wake up tomorrow morning. That's a guarantee. You don't change one day or 1 week, in 1 day and 1 week, your life of 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 years. You don't. You have to empty the cup first to allow somebody to pour the QLA in it. Some of you will not empty the cup. Some of you will think that emptying it almost full or completely empty works, but it doesn't. You have to completely empty it. You have to forget everything. But it is the closest example or metaphor that I've found over the years that shows how hard it is. But when you do get it, and when you hear the people on the webinars, They're all going to say 3 or 4 things the same, one of which is they immerse themselves from the time they get up in the morning to the time they go to sleep at night. Okay. Then we had Mr. Coggins, which he's more or less a famous guy now. But he's famous for a different reason. He's famous, never given up. But for those of you that have a 6-pack, you wasted your time. Why did you've asked yourself, or I've asked myself, why do these guys spend as much time trying to have a 6-pack as opposed to making money? Because it's easier to get a 6-pack than it is to make money. That's why. And intellectually, you know it. For 2 or 3 of you in here, you're no closer to a 6-pack than I am 8 feet tall. You're just tubs of shit. That's fine. Some of those guys are tubs of shit. And there's no 6-pack on there. Not a one. Not even remotely close. Not even remotely close. Okay, now the founder. We're talking about Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's. In a word, describe him. Yes, sir.
Persistence.
They're all persistent. It's like when I say when we talk about this, the templates and the scripts you're going to get, I never took no for an answer. For those of you that come out of sales, you realize normally it takes 17 no's to get a yes. 17, 17. Most of the kids give up after 3 or 4 no's. I never gave up. Still don't. And one of the things in your scripts, which has come back to bite me in the ass many times by our children, I say, well, what, Mr. Banker, what is it about the transaction that we could change to make it an acceptable credit? Or, Mr. Seller, what about my offer would need to change for you to say yes? And our children, same thing, growing up, normally went to Sally first. What is it that we have to change to make you say yes, Daddy? So I've lived with that for a long, long time. Now they're adults and they have families, and so they don't ask me much if they ever even talk to me. What else about the founder? Yes, sir.
Obsessed.
Pardon?
He was obsessed.
Most of the guys that that you've read about have OCD, like myself, compulsive disorder. I have ADHD, and my dyslexia has gone away as I got older, as does OCD, as the ADHD lessons. And what it really does is you learn to deal with it. They just called me retarded when I was going to school. They weren't interested in any of the affliction I might have. Okay, YouTube, thank you.